deadline for Michigan candidates to file nominating petitions is less than a week away. 8 Michigan GOP candidates are in the running for U.S. Senate to unseat Democrat Debbie Stabenow. One has a plan for reforming Social Security. We'll discuss Chuck Marino's fiscal and social policies on West Michigan Week. Joining us on West Michigan Week on our panel today, flying solo, Dave Murray, MLive Media Group. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure, thank you.
Too nice a day. We got people playing hooky, I think. And Chuck Marino, you are running for U.S. Senate.
Yes, I am.
As a GOP candidate. Thanks for making the drive in. You're an East Sider. You're on the west side of the state, but I understand you make numerous visits. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I first served as a U.S. Marine during 69 through 72. And after leaving the Marine Corps, I served as an international businessman, serving 2 different continents, one for a Japanese firm and one for a German firm. From there, I went to open my own business. I own a company called National Building Inspections. We do property condition assessments, especially for banks. Banks have draw inspections when they're building a building. We go in and make sure that the people or the contractors completing the building, and then we release funds to them. So Fifth Third's one of our customers on this side of the state. And so we frequently come over here and visit a number of your buildings.
And I know you've got you're coming down the back stretch. You need signatures. You're close. Will you make it by Tuesday?
We're doing everything possible. We're pulling out all the stops. In fact, we've got a full crew working today. I was just on the east side collecting signatures this morning, so made the long trip on this side of the state, and all day tomorrow and Sunday and Monday. So we're doing everything we can. We've just collected from all but 4 people, and we're going through them to make sure the ones we can spot don't qualify, so we know how many we have to qualify. So we're working very diligently. We believe we can make it, but you never can tell on those things because of the fact of how many are going to be disqualified.
It's so hard to run statewide for someone who's kind of new to politics. And this is your first time running for elected office. Why go for U.S. Senator? Why not start something a little more local?
That was the very first question I ever got asked from Hoekstra, believe it or not. The Senate's broken. And, you know, I come from a county and a state, really, that have been fixed. My county is Genoa Township, and Mike Rogers is my congressman. And he's doing a fine job. He's everything we could want in a conservative congressman. And then on the state side, we have Bill Rogers and we have Joe Huynh. And both those guys are very conservative. So those parts of our government, at least that affect me, are fixed. The thing that's not fixed is both Debbie Stabenow and Carl Levin. They are both socialists in their viewpoints, and they are leading us down a path of destruction. As we can see, Michigan is just have been in the toilet. Debbie Stabenow has taken us from 21st in manufacturing down to 43rd in manufacturing, and she co-chairs manufacturing. So there are a lot of other issues that I'm very well versed in, especially Agenda 21 from the UN trying to take over, be the internet police, a number of things with the industry, foreign companies, because I worked for foreign companies, foreign taxes, how taxes affect the businessman. And I really believe that the background I have in the international field made me a perfect candidate for the Senate. So.
And how does your business experience translate into the political arena? Very different worlds.
They are very different worlds, but every morning I have to get up and make sure I can make a budget. And every morning I got to make sure I create jobs for the people that are out there that are working for me so that they have a place to work. So it does translate, especially today, in today's environment where we don't have jobs and we're fighting budgets and those kinds of things. And I think I have unique ideas and perspectives. I'm one of the few people that are running that's not a lawyer. I don't know if you know, Congress is made up of 63% lawyers, and that's why we have so many regulations. I'm not ridiculing lawyers, nor am I putting them down, but we talk about diverse society. Well, let's get some more diversity in our Congress people and our people in politics. And a businessman, I think, is what we need right now. I think that's why, from the very beginning, I backed Romney, is because he does have a business background. He understands business. He understands we need to create jobs. We need to turn America around. We need to get somebody that can turn America around.
Well, let's talk about taxes, regulation, because that all falls in line with what you'd like to do. What would you specifically do if you could bullet point, three or four issues that you would change on both those sides of regulation and taxation? What would you do?
Sure. First of all, with regulations, we have way too many regulations. And the first thing we have to do is we have to sunset our regulations. We have to make sure that every time a regulation comes back up for review, there's three criteria it's reviewed under. First review has to be, how does it affect profits? Second is, how does it affect jobs? And third is, how it affects the workers themselves. And if it's not a win-win situation on each one of those things, there's something wrong with the regulation. We are a capitalist country, and we have to remember capitalism is what made us strong. And it's our best interest to always go from that viewpoint, rather than going from a viewpoint as how does it affect government and how does it affect taxes. The second part of your question is taxes itself. Business taxes kills business. The government's really slick in being able to say that businesses should pay taxes. Well, business is not a person. They're not an entity. Whatever taxes they need to pay gets dumped back on the people. Now, don't get me wrong. They can pick up some tax load. There is some place for them. But you can't put them at a rate that's higher than their competitors. And who are business competitors today? We're in a world economy. It's all the other world. It's China. It's Russia. It's Great Britain, France. And we got to make sure we're competitive. And one way to be competitive is low taxes. So the quick fix that everybody talks about, which I talked about very young in this campaign, was to let any profits made overseas, as General Motors makes profits in China, they can't bring the money back here without paying a tax on it. Now, you and I both know they're not going to bring the money back and lose part of that profit they made. So they invest it in China. The government also sets up them businesses to open overseas. They have a special fund that they reward businesses if you open a business overseas. So let's take that reward away so that it doesn't reward them. So those are just a couple of real quick ways to help both our tax problems and our job problems.
I know you have a plan for Social Security and our other entitlements, and of course they all feed into our massive deficits. As a senator, what would you do to try to bring Social Security back on track a little bit?
Sure. I think on my website, chuckmarino.com, you'll find a couple unique things that I've done both with the Supreme Court and with Social Security. Social Security, I have a program that's just nicknamed right now until we find a real good name for it, that 3SL. And it actually it involves a three-pronged approach. First of all, Social Security was dumped into the budget by Lyndon Johnson. And I think he dumped it into the budget illegally. I think that being able to use Social Security to balance the budget was wrong, just like Obama taking Medicare and taking $530 billion out of Medicaid and transferring to Obamacare. So what we need to do is pull it back out of the public fund and put it back in the hands of senior citizens. And you put it back in the private sector. You let them manage it. But they need some revenue streams from it. It is lacking because the government has taken so much money out of it, has not let it grow from the interest that they could have let it grow. So you got to create some revenue streams. Well, I think a unique way to create a revenue stream and keep people interested in Social Security is to use student loans. In other words, people who, kids coming up can apply for a student loan through Social Security, and they can obtain a student loan through Social Security. And they got their Social Security to pay it back. In other words, a deduction. They get a Social Security deduction, and they also get a student loan deduction from it. But also their employers can also pay into it, extra money into their Social Security to help pay off their loan. You work for somebody, you can say to them, look, I'll pay off your student loan if you come and you're hired in here. The third way is for parents. There are a lot of parents, does Clinton really need his Social Security? Does Bush need a Social Security? Well, let's give them a deduction and let them take a deduction for not taking their Social Security off their taxes and let them donate it back. Or they don't have to take the deduction and they can donate the money and put it into their kids' trust to pay off their student loans. So there's a number of things. If they work in the private sector and they want to volunteer somewhere, fire departments, forestry, those kinds of things, whatever the employer would have paid them, instead it could go to pay their student loan off at Social Security. So they could work full-time at one job and then part-time at another job to get their student loans paid down. Now, the one thing that I have a problem with is anytime you set up some kind of program like that, everybody goes, oh, wow, cash cow. I get to raise
Tuition.
and everything
Yeah.
else. So what the seniors are called to do, because a lot of them are retired, they're looking for something to do, they're more than able bodies, is they actually go in and rate all the colleges. And there's a 5-point rating system for each one of the colleges. And it's based on how fast the individual graduates from college. It's based on whether or not they use new technologies. Why are we going to brick and mortars when a lot of times we can go right on the internet and get our schooling from? That surely would keep down costs. How much is the college professor is inside the classroom? If he's got a TA teaching, why should you get a high rating for that? If you qualify on each one of those ratings I've set up, you get the lowest rate. So if the lowest rate is at 4%, that's what you borrow money. If you don't qualify under those ones, or your rating goes higher, you get up to a 5%. So you could actually be loaning money to a student that may be going to one of the colleges at 9%. And what we're trying to do is influence the schools to keep tuition costs down and help. And I think seniors would want to get on board with this kind of thing. The last thing is the government. The government, a lot of people said to me, well, the government uses this money. One way was to balance the budget for the war, the Vietnam War. Okay, if they want to borrow the money from the seniors, they can at 6%. And that's the minimum. They have to borrow the money. It's still oversaw by the Congress. The Congress is still in charge of it. That's part of their mandate. But the seniors have a voting right of whether or not and how the money's been to be used. So that's kind of a short synopsis of how it is. It's 9 pages long. If you get on my website, we give you an overview, but the only monies I'm asking for is donations for, if you want to see it, make a donation, small one, and you can see the whole program.
Have you run that by some economists to get a set? Well, no, it's very creative.
Right.
You're solving a few problems. You're eliminating it from being a slush fund, in essence. Mm-hmm. You're removing it from the budget so the deficit shrinks. Have you run it by economists?
We have run a couple of economists. We've run a couple of well-known CPAs. And everyone have said with the figures that they can get, and some of these figures are fudged just a little bit, it looks like a program that can sustain itself independently. And that's what we want to do, an independent program that could stand on its own, could get the interest back, because the young people, you can opt out of it too if you want to. You can if you take a student loan, you can sign out and opt out of it. But you must put so much away, and you must report it on your taxes that you put so much away in order to keep out of Social Security. And if you go 2 consecutive years without putting the money that you said you were going to put in, you've got to go back into Social Security for a short time of 5 years.
Will payroll remain one of those revenue streams?
Payroll deductions will remain for everybody that stays in the program. But if you opt out of it, your money will go to whatever program you want it to go for.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Chuck Marino. And we're back with U.S. Senate candidate Chuck Marino, running in the Republican Party here. Very creative, the idea of tackling Social Security, a man at least with some kind of a plan here. Now I'm going to come to the next entitlement on the checklist, Medicare, Medicaid, and if you want to branch off into Obamacare, be my guest.
Sure. First of all, the problem with our system isn't the fact that insurance or people are opting out of insurance or people aren't paying for insurance. Our problem is the way the system's set up. Let me give you a quick example. When my daughter broke her leg years ago, We took her in, and she was skiing. She was only 4 years old, and she had a spiral break. We took her to the doctor, very nice doctor, and he fixed it. And the bill came and handed it to my wife, and it was $1,200. And my wife looked at it and she said, wow, that's a lot of money. And he says, just turn it into your insurance company. She said, you don't understand, we don't have insurance. Oh, he said, just give me the bill back. Walked back in the back, crossed out the one where the 1,000 was, handed back to us $250. The problem is that when insurance came into play, they mostly paid for the bill at the rate it was charged to the individual. Today, it's no longer done that way. If you went in for medical treatment right now, you'd actually most likely pay what insurance is used to pay in the latter part of the year where they paid 80, 90%. You probably pay of that $1,200, $950, and insurance pay $250 now. And that's what we're getting to, where it's kind of flipped around. And why has it gotten that way? Mostly because, again, doctors and hospitals have all figured, well, this is a cash cow. Let's just milk it. And what is your disadvantage? One is you don't know the codes. They keep all the codes separate. If you were to call and find out a code, I got an MRI about 2 years ago, and the MRI came, and I checked around and said, how much is this MRI going to be? They said $5,000 to $6,000. So I called around, and I got an independent person that told me $3,000 to $4,000. I said, okay. So I went to the hospital because my doctor worked for that hospital. I thought, well, my insurance is going to pay this much, and I'm going to pay that much, which worked out that the hospital was going to pay, the insurance was going to pay about $4,500. I was going to be responsible for $15,000. So I said, okay. So I get the bill, and it was $19,000. And I called the hospital. Now they just stonewalled me and stonewalled me. And I finally called the doctor and said, tell me what you asked for. And they said there was 3 MRIs. I had a slip and fall down in Indiana, one for the head, one for the back, one for the torso. I said, but I was only there for 45 minutes and they did 1 shot for me. Oh, they did? Yes. What did you code it for? And they said, oh, maybe we coded it wrong. Can you tell me the codes? No, I can't tell you the codes. Now, in most cases, I would have just paid the bill out-of-pocket expense, but at this time in my life, I'm checking everything and everything. And I find out that that's how they coded it. But I would have never known that if I didn't research it. And I had to go back to the hospital and make them recode it the proper way and to pay it so the insurance company paid for it. So the problem we have right now is between the insurance company and the hospitals to make sure that we understand what we're paying for. The second thing is I'm a capitalist, and all of us in the room are capitalists. Let's let capitalistic society regulate and help regulate. Let's let independent people. MRI is not brain surgery.
It's not new technology
It's
anymore.
not new technology. Why can't we go to somebody off base and get an MRI? And there are plenty of people that are doing it. And the third thing that I think we have to remember is that with a lot of the treatments we have, they've been doing those treatments for hundreds of years. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe at least a decade. When you take your car in for an oil change, they know exactly what it's going to cost. They've got all the costs figured out, okay? You can't tell me that a doctor setting an arm, a doctor doing some kind of surgery doesn't have a cost model, exactly what that's going to cost. Now, people say they do cost up. I don't want to get to, sometimes I say bad words, but there's something wrong.
We can edit you out here.
Thank you. I was going to say that's bull, you know, because my wife, when she was in having a baby, they gave her some Kerry lotion, and they didn't do a cost up. In the store, it cost $1.49. It cost her $47.
Wow.
To get that same Kerry lotion. Same bottle, everything. So the point of the matter is that isn't a cost up. We need competitiveness, and we need to be able to see online, especially in today's market, if people had to post what they charged, let other people post, we were able to go find out what's going on, tell people where we want to go, the insurance company, where we want to go, where we want to have our stuff, not let the insurance company say they're out of network or they're this or that. Prices would start coming down. And then some of us could self-insure ourselves, and others of us would get insurance because insurance would become a lot more competitive. So I think that what we need to do is we need to put competition back into the workplace. We need to take the veils off a lot of the information that's distributed, especially in codes and those kinds of things. And I think you'd see a reduction in price. As far as socialism, as far as Obamacare is concerned, It's not about Obamacare. That wasn't what Obama was about. That's not what Debbie Stabenow was about. It was about socialism. It was about moving all of us citizens into a program that is funded by the government for the government. And there isn't one program that anybody can tell me that the government runs that they run effectively or efficiently. So Obamacare would be the first thing that I got rid of. In fact, I've called for everybody to meet the day after the election in November, to sit down with everybody, because I do believe we're going to take Congress back, the Senate, sit down and write a plan for turning this country around before January, the day after the election, and put the plan in and vote it in the 4th of January.
Obamacare, of course, is before the U.S. Supreme Court. You might have some thoughts on the Supreme Court.
Sure. You know, the Supreme Court is the only body of our government that's not elected. But there is some restraints that they have, and the Congress oversees those, and one is terms. Now, everybody calls for term limitations. My problem with term limitations is you wind up throwing out good people with bad people. And I've got a problem with that, because there are good people. And what is a good Supreme Court justice? One that believes in the Constitution. Not Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, who says to everybody that our Constitution's outdated. The day she said that, there should have been some recourse for the American public to say, okay, you think it's outdated. That's your opinion, you're right to that opinion. But you took an oath to uphold it, and you can no longer uphold it as long as you believe that. So what would we do? We do a confidence, no confidence vote. Somebody could ask for that to be brought, her to be brought up to the American people for that. It doesn't throw her out of office. It just says that we have no confidence that she's going to stand behind the Supreme Court. She could only be brought up on issues about the Constitution, on constitutional things, and she would go before the Congress. At that time, the Congress would interview her and decide whether or not she is upholding the Constitution. If she's not, or she's found not to uphold the Constitution, they would then make a recommendation back to the president to nominate a new person. Or they could return her to the bench. Now, if she gets a second one, and this is every 6 years, if she gets a second no confidence, she's automatically retired at that point. So my whole thing is to put it back in the American people's hands. We're a society that is from the ground up society. And we got to continue to strive to always have the people involved. And this is a way to get the people involved, to let the Supreme Court know that they owe something to the Constitution and the way this country was founded, and that's on the people's back, not on the politicians' back, not on the president's back. And they have a responsibility to uphold our Constitution. And that's what that does, the confidence, no confidence vote.
Would they have to get signatures and run? Or would we still have an appointment kind of a process where you would have names that would be drawn and then...
Yeah. Yeah, that process was set up by the Constitution. That process would still be intact the way it is. But again, the people would be involved from the confidence, no confidence vote. And again, it wouldn't replace them. It would just push them back to Congress for the Congress to uphold their end of it. I think up until this point, without me getting too belligerent by making this statement, I think the Congress has been a little bit neglecting their responsibility. I think that over the last at least 3 years, not passing a budget, and secondly, not doing the things that they could do to make sure some of the things that got passed already didn't get funded. Their job is to stop funding things. The third thing is to inquire about Ginsburg, why Ginsburg wasn't brought in by Congress and asked if she had a problem with our Constitution, why she felt she should continue to serve, should be because she took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And those are all within the realm of what Congress should be doing.
Are we at the point now, though? I mean, you've been watching Congress here. Can opposing parties come to agreements? I mean, you're talking about Congress, and we're at a stalemate right now. But at some point, I mean, you're looking at creative ways to solve Social Security. Something needs to be done with the deficit. At some point, can we have people sitting down across from each other and trying to hammer out a way to get things moving again?
Well, you guys are too young to remember this, but there was a day. there was a day that on the Democratic side, you had conservatives and you had liberals. But the liberals were true liberals, just believed in bigger government to solve issues where they weren't socialist. And conservatives were people that believed in the American public to solve the problems. In today's political arena, the Democrats are not made up of any conservatives. You can't find any conservatives. And a lot of times you can't even find liberals. And in fact, liberals today are called rhinos, and they're in the Republican Party. And there are rhinos. The problem with compromise is that the pendulum has swung so far left that the only way for Republicans to compromise is to be in the center. Now, let me give you an example. The biggest issue that a lot of the I'm sorry.
That's okay. Wrap up your thought here. You're good.
The biggest issue that a lot of people talk about is abortion on the liberal side of it, and say that we should do away with abortions, or we should have abortions. Well, on the Republican side, a compromise would, they want 10, we'll give them 3. Well, abortions are completely wrong on the conservative side. So there is no compromise on that from the standpoint of where the parties are aligned today.
All right, more information, chuckmarino.com. On the panel, Dave Murray, MLive Media Group.
Thank you,
for
sir.
Showing up. Appreciate it. Chuck Marino, running for U.S. Senate. Best of luck, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week on West Michigan Week.